Hello there, good people. So glad to be here today as we talk about the skill that everyone loves to hate. What am I talking about? I am talking about public speaking. Oh my gosh. Yet another one of my favorite things to talk about and to do, but is hated by most professionals, business folks, a lot of people who need to do it, a lot hate it. And we're going to talk about that today and some of the things you can do to kind of help soften that and maybe help you to even like it a little bit. So here's the thing. First of all, my name's Patricia, and I love being here to help share with you some of the things that I've learned down through the years from my decades of experience as an attorney and a senior executive, a registered lobbyist. I don't know, I've done a lot of stuff, served on a lot of nonprofit boards and leadership positions throughout the community, mom, wife, all the things. And there's so many things that I've learned over the years that I want to be able to share more about those in a more informal, where we're just having coffee and talking about it, as well as some things that I might not have shared before. So some of the topics themselves aren't necessarily new, but the perspective that I'm bringing to them is what I'm going for so that people can know that, when we're talking about being in leadership positions, when we're talking about speaking up for other people and being a strong advocate, when we're talking about what it means to help others to be empowered and to empower yourself while also learning how to take care of yourself in the midst of all of that that's going on, to know that it's possible, that it's not pretty sometimes, but it's definitely possible, and that even through all the mess, you can achieve what it is that you're really looking for and be able to live and work with purpose. So, before we get too far along, I want to make sure that you like this video and subscribe, because as we are shifting and relaunching this channel, it's time to get serious about it. And I am. So we are on, at this point, we are almost 2 weeks in to relaunching this channel, and I'm having a good time doing it, and I look forward to sharing more about that. Okay, so now back to this thing that people love to hate, and it's public speaking. I cannot tell, like, I literally, one of those cliches, if I had $1 for every time someone said they hated to speak in public or to do it or how uncomfortable they were, like, I would be pretty wealthy by now. And here's the funny thing is it's not because I have been always this, very, what's the word, outgoing speaker myself. I actually grew up being, probably people would describe me as being shy. I've since learned over the years, yeah, I might be shy about a few things, but I'm really more self-described as reserved, because I like to stand back and watch what's going on before I decide how much of my energy I'm going to give you. But that being reserved gets taken for being quiet, for being shy, and not putting yourself out there. Here's the reality though. When I was 14 years old and going to high school, I decided actively to join the speech and debate team because I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And what I knew of being lawyers at the time, no one in my family had ever done it. I knew that lawyers needed to be able to talk, and they needed to be able to speak and be an advocate for people. So that means I needed to know how to talk. And so I did my first speech in high school. I think I was doing like poetry and prose for a competition. Like that was my first avenue into it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is just so horrible. And I did okay. I mean, that wasn't my genre because poetry and prose reading was very much more on the drama side of things. But and then I think I tried once, a few times, uh, oratory. And that's where you have this speech that you prepared and you give it, the same speech and you build it up and move along. And that wasn't my thing. But here is where I found my space: extemporaneous speaking. Oh my gosh. Even to this day, I still can't believe that that was the thing I landed on and came to love so much. And we had a very competitive speech and debate team. So I was not at the quote top of the heap until my senior year because there were so many great speakers on my team that I had to compete for spaces even within my own team. And but meanwhile, that allowed me to keep practicing until I could earn a top spot, on the team. And let me tell you, okay, so for those of you who don't know what extemporaneous speaking is, it is literally engaging in public speaking with very little to no preparation. Now, the preparation comes in studying topics, doing research, all of that leading up to competitions. And you're like, well, how do you know what you're doing, or what you're studying and researching for if you don't know what your topic's going to be? Well, it was always related to the topics of the day, whether it was national politics, international politics, or pop culture issues, social policy issues of the day. And so that is how we would do it. And so literally during speech and debate time, those of us who were engaged in extemporaneous speaking, we would be doing research, creating clippings to tie into our research files so that we would be able to dig through them quickly and find what we needed if we needed to for a speech. All of that, which totally explains, now I'm thinking about this even more, totally explains the nerdy, let me find all the facts piece, because that I am definitely that girl. I need to know all the facts so that then I can speak well on it, right? I do this in my everyday life, period. Drives my family crazy, whatever. It's how I was literally trained. So the thing is that I would do that. And so that by the time competition time came, and you would have to go into a room and you would pick a topic, and it would be national, politics, or it could be international things, or it would be some social issues or concerns of the day, whatever it might be. And that was your topic, and you were given 30 minutes to prepare a speech that could be up to 7 minutes long. And that's how it worked. And when your time was up, you would go in and you would give your presentation to the judges, and they would rank you. And if you did well, you could advance. If you didn't, then you go watch people and learn some things and come back and try again. And I was on the speech and debate team for 4 years, all 4 years of high school. I gave up track and field for speech and debate. My track coach was not happy about that, but she was not a nice woman, anyways. So that is what I did. It became my love. And then to add on top of that is I also became a Lincoln Douglas, we abbreviated it as LD, Lincoln Douglas uh, debater. And that's where you would take issues. There would be a set topic, and you had to learn how to write for and against whatever the topic is. So on both sides. And when you went to competition, you would be assigned a topic, or you would be assigned a side, and you would argue that side for that round. the next round you could be assigned the other side, and you'd have to debate that side. And again, you be able to debate those issues, bring them to the forefront, and then advance. So those were the two things that I came to love in high school, and literally are the foundation of my ability to engage in public speaking today. High school speech and debate. Yes. Huge fan of it. And always wished one of my kids could have done it. My daughter would have been the one, but she was a huge dancer, and the dance competitions competed with speech and debate while she was in the regular high school program. Then when she came out and went and did a virtual remote program, it didn't matter. She was doing, because she was traveling all over the country for dance at that point. So, why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you that because I am trained to be a public speaker. I still do not claim to be the best public speaker, because some of my flaws back when I was 16 years old have stuck with me down through the years. And that is, my brain moves faster than my mouth, and my mouth moves pretty fast. So sometimes I can get to going and talking really, really fast. And so I have to like actively remember to slow things down, to stick to my main points, so that I can make sure that my message gets across. But that comes from training, for me to even recognize when I need to do that, right? Right now, today, I'm speaking with no notes. My notes here are my reminders of the things I need to make sure not to forget to say when it comes to structural for the video. But as far as the content for today, I've written nothing down, because this is something that I've been an advocate for my entire life, basically. And it's what I've been trained to do, right? So as I move forward throughout my college career, through my volunteer service, through my work, my ability to be able to analyze sensitive, controversial issues quickly, determine pros and cons of it, and then maybe even give a speech on it, it's not something that comes naturally. I was trained to do it with lots and lots of practice, years, decades of practice doing it. And I'm laying that foundation for a reason. Okay. It also helped me to be able to assume other people's voices, right? So when it came time for, I worked for several politicians, I elected officials, appointed officials, uh, senior executives. I will never forget when I worked for the university system, we did not have a formal speechwriter on staff. My chancellor had a speechwriter from when he was an elected official previously. So he had a speechwriter he used, but that person did not have a policy or education background. So when it came time to preparing him to give testimony before legislative committees, or even a few of his speeches, he was a pretty good, he could write a lot of his speeches himself. But I wrote virtually everything that came out of that man's mouth for the time that I was there when it came to the legislature. Right? That's what this turned into. So now it's not even about me writing and creating, putting words for myself. I became the person unofficially, because my title was never speechwriter. I was never formally a speechwriter for any of my bosses, and I did it for just about all of them. Right? I'm working through my head, and I'm like, yes, I wrote a lot of speeches, presentations, articles. All of these things came from my training as a public speaker learning how to put words together and then to deliver them. Okay? So I say all of this to, number one, let you know what my background is and how it plays in, and to remind you that when you see someone out there who's being so eloquent with their words, or, oh my gosh, how did you just get up there and say something on the spot? For many of those people, it came as a result of lots and lots of practice. Very rarely is someone so great a speaker that they could just do it off the cuff. There are those people. However, even those people still have to do studying. They still have to prepare. Even if they have a speechwriter, they have to know how they want to deliver the words in their own voice. I remember when one of my bosses, commissioner for education here in the state, she had a speechwriter. She had a speechwriter who could write on education policy topics. However, when it came to my area where I was overseeing part of an agency at that point, like a fifth of the agency. It was on P16, which is pre-K through 16. It was the whole pipeline from kindergarten to college. And it was this new division. There was a lot of things going on around it, and how we could make sure that we could have kids go from the beginning to the end and not have any gaps, like not fall through the cracks along the way. And when it came to that topic, she went to her speechwriter and was like, so I'm not going to need you to write those speeches for me. Patricia's going to write those speeches for me. So here I am as a senior executive running a part of this agency, and part of my duties now is to write the speeches for the commissioner on this topic. I can never get away from it. Because once someone recognizes you as having that skill, because that's what it is a skill, it is an invaluable one that not many people really know how to do, want to do, much less do it well. I have written speeches, like I said, for a state senator, a lieutenant governor, a commissioner of education, a chancellor in the education system, nonprofit leaders. I- I've written speeches for others as well as for myself to deliver, because I've been practicing it as a part of my responsibilities my entire life, but also because it started as something that I simply enjoyed doing. And because I knew I needed that skill in order to prepare for what I really thought I was going to be doing, which was practicing law. I did practice law at the beginning of my career, jointly with doing legislative work. And then that part became less, but it did not lessen my need to be able to engage in speaking in, publicly. It actually rose, it increased, because as part of the legislature, I was giving testimony, writing testimony before legislative committees for policy, writing presentations, all of that, writing policy papers, all of those things I was doing all the time in my work, for my work. So, what am I describing to you? That number one, public public speaking is a skill. Skills can be learned. Bottom line, skills can be learned. I don't care where you are in your business, your entrepreneurial journey, your professional journey. I do not care. You can learn how to be an effective speaker where you are today. It requires effort. It absolutely is going to require practice. You can't get good without practice. And that goes with anything, right? Any skill you learn. If you want to speak a foreign language, you have to learn the language and then you have to practice the language. If you want to get good at a particular sport, you have to learn about the sport and then you have to practice the sport, right? All areas of our lives. Public speaking is no different from that. And yet it still continues to terrify people. Now, are there times when I get nervous? Sure. Most of the time, the butterflies are not because I'm scared, unless for some reason there's something really sensitive about the topic, and this is the first time I'm giving a speech or presentation on it. But normally that doesn't mean scared. Just means I may be nervous, but I'm not scared anymore. Or if I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much here. How do I narrow this down? Like, so that'll give me butterflies. But most of the time, the butterflies are about being like that adrenaline going, like, okay, wow, I'm getting ready to do this. But even if you're scared and you're uncertain, your willingness to learn the skill will help you move through that. What else do you need to be thinking about? It's like, okay, I know I need to be able to give presentations at the office, speak up more in the office, at meetings, lead my team, because all of that is a skill that can be learned so that you can deliver whatever the message is. And when I'm saying deliver a message, people will take that as, oh, that's something you're trying to, you came from politics, all that. You are delivering a message in every business meeting that you're in. When you're having to give a presentation on the update on a project or to present some new idea or to advocate on behalf of your work or your project or your people so that you can maintain funding for it. Like, this is when having the ability and the skill to engage in public speaking comes into play and is an extreme benefit. You would be surprised at the number of attorneys that I have come in contact with over the years who don't enjoy public speaking. They're brilliant minds. They can write the heck out of briefs, but they want to stay behind the scenes because getting in front, and because people always assume that all lawyers have to be able to be out in front in the courtroom. That is not it at all. The majority of lawyering is behind a desk. It's in meetings talking to other people about how, the approach to, let's say, how to handle a case or the arguments that need to be made, but it's not necessarily delivering those arguments verbally. So that's why I say it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. No, getting the skill under your belt will be incredibly valuable to not just your career or your business, but to your own self confidence and helping you to be more open to speaking off the cuff when someone asks you, say, hey, can you give us, a few points on why you think this is a great idea? That simple thing could send some people over the edge, right? But it's a matter of being prepared. So, whatever your area of expertise is, being confident in the knowledge that you have as an expert. And if you don't think you're an expert yet, well, more than likely you have some knowledge more than the average person. And so you need to be confident in that. And then there are certain things you always know that you can just sit down and rant about privately with a friend, but all of a sudden you're going to freeze when it comes to making that presentation to others. Well, it's a matter of the transition between the two, right? So that you could have 1,000 things that you'd be ranting to your friend about this particular topic. But if you're thinking, you know what, I just need to be able to keep 2 or 3 of these at the top of mind to be able to have a conversation with my boss, a supervisor, a potential business lead, right? So you don't have to try to remember it all. So here's a little training trick. When I was growing up in my speech and debate, we were not, if you were going to be a top speaker on the debate team, you learned to speak without notes. Like, we would go in, and as you're learning and training, you would have specific, especially for extemporaneous. For oratory, you had to memorize that. There was no walking in with something in your hand. Like, that was a completely memorized speech, and you had to do it. That didn't work as well for me because I might forget parts of it. Because speaking off the cuff, now that I can do. But what you do is we would, at max, be allowed to bring in a note card. I think back then they were maximum the 4x6, so we would treat, like you could hold it this way, the long way is the horizontal way, or you could flip it. Just depends. But the thing is, you can't be looking down, reading from your card, because you're missing the eye contact. You're missing the ability to connect with your audience. And that's not effective, right? But people will use notes as a crutch. And I've seen it over and over again, right? So what you do is you train yourself back from writing out the details to writing out an outline. So if I were rushed to do something that I wasn't necessarily fully prepared for, I would jot down probably these 5 to 7 things. My greeting, if there was something I wanted to make sure to remind people to say or do, because normally I always forget to tell people, like currently, if I was doing something, I forget to tell them to go check the website or how they can reach me or whatever. So I might do that, right? Uh, who I am. So introductions and greetings. Then restating what the topic is or what the issue is or why you've been asked to speak. And then identifying, you know, 2, 3, 4 tops. Normally you don't even get to 4, but probably 2 or 3 things that are really important about the topic that you've been asked to speak on. And then conclusion, which the saving grace for conclusions is a story. If you can keep a story in your back pocket, you've always got it made, right? It works for writing. When you're writing a prepared speech, it works for extemporaneous speaking. So just maybe a note of tell the story about, and like whatever it is. Because again, you're telling that from your viewpoint. So you should be able to tell that story and then conclude. That's it. If you're in a meeting in the office, 3 points, who it's for, what the problems are, what the solutions are, period. Everything else you can back up. You can say that. I'm happy to provide, supporting documentation for this. It works for anything. Intro, your topic, and 2 or 3 points to be made about it. A conclusion, done. If you can maintain that basic structure, you've got half the battle. What happens with people is they get so caught up in whatever it is, especially if you're, God bless, a really brainy person and you know a lot. Here's the thing, you don't have to tell everything you know in one sitting. That's when you say, I have so much more to say about this. If you would like to hear about it, you can go check things out over here. Or I wrote this article, I invite you to go, to go check it out. I created this report to support this presentation. You can review that. Okay. But don't feel obligated to lay other things out. Because here's the thing, if you're in an environment, like let's say you're in a professional meeting of people, whatever, normally there's a question and answer session. So if you have the ability to participate in question and answers, then all of that other stuff can get resolved then. A lot of the time, people will be happy to ask those questions. But if you're in a formal, I'm here, I'm giving this presentation, this or these quick insights, I've been given 15 or 20 minutes to talk about it, do that. And then, invite people to come ask you questions privately, one on one, or to, follow up in an email. There's so much breadth to it. But the bottom line is you have to practice. You don't learn how to speak publicly if you don't speak publicly. I mean, like, bottom line, it does not happen. But you help yourself by being prepared. So knowing yourself, do not BS people. People know when you're lying or you're not sure or you don't really have your facts straight. You're much better off saying, I believe it's, a 3 to 5% thing, but I would need to go check. Like, it's that simple to be able to say something, acknowledge that you don't know the exact numbers, and be able to come back or invite someone to go back and check on what exactly it will be. In today's world, they will be fact checking you right there on your phone, on their phones. We all do it. I do it. Okay? So don't get caught up in that. Be prepared, especially if you have an opportunity to actually prepare the speech or to prepare your remarks, right? Make sure that you stay on topic. Oh my God. That's that whole thing of why it's so important to work from an outline, because to keep yourself on point, to keep yourself on track. If you are working from a full prepared speech, there are lots of tips and tricks I'm happy to share. There are lots of tips and tricks. Some of the simplest ones are to make sure that you can always keep your eyes above. So when I would give my elected officials a speech, it was never written in 10-point font, fully, single space on a piece of paper. You would be like this. I would have to be like this to read it, right? Can't do that. So the trick is to increase the font and only print to half the page. I'm telling you, there's always a way to help yourself with markers of where your main points are, right? So there are things you can do to help yourself. Even when I'm giving speeches to this day, and I know that I may, get excited and go somewhere or whatever, I will give myself markers to remind me of where I am. I will increase the font so that I'm not trying to figure out what in the world does that word say, right? Because I know my eyes are bad now. There are things you can do to help yourself to also increase your comfort level. That's part of the preparation part. What are the things you need to do? Having a glass of water or tea or something like that with you. It's perfectly natural to be able to want to be able to take a sip. No gulping. But these are all things that play into you developing that skill to a comfort level that you can engage in on a regular basis and be effective. Right? So be prepared. Don't make up stuff. Keep it brief. Prepare an outline to keep you on track. Tell a story if it's appropriate. And then, this is something I know a lot of people don't like to do. If it's been recorded, go back. Or if someone in the audience that you know, asking for their feedback. And then prepare to do it again. Because practice is what makes you stronger. It's going to increase your confidence and it's going to build things up. Now, there are going to be some folks who are like, I still don't like public speaking. You don't have to like it, but you do have to be able to engage in it if you want to be, if you want to grow in your whatever, in your profession. I don't care what it is you're doing. I mean, these days, if you look at athletes, athletes get communications training. I don't know why you think they don't. They absolutely do. And those who don't, you can tell. And I'm like, you need a speechwriter. You need a coach. You need a PR person to help you, right? So if you have the potential of being put on a hot mic, it's something you've got to learn. It's a skill. Practice it. Get coaching for it. There are people who are paid to do it. There are all kinds of things to support that work because the higher you go in your profession, with your business, if you're wanting to become an elected official, work in government or something like that, you're going to have to give a lot of speeches. So, there's voice care. There's things you can do as far as exercises and preparation ahead of time, right? Just like you would not go and try to run a marathon without preparation, same for if you want to become an effective speaker. You have to put in the work, you have to practice, and know that it doesn't come overnight. Get your coach, get you a trainer, have the right nutrition, like all those things that a marathoner does. Those are similar things to I want and or need to become a better speaker for my business, for my work, uh, in order to advance my career. Those are the things you can do. So many things. I could keep going. One of my favorite topics. I'm sure I have some resources that I will do. I will need to go look because I think one of my old intro to public speaking, or I think I used to do one that was public speaking for non-public speakers. I prepared that some time ago. I'll go look and see what I have and drop in the description. And as always, if you need some assistance with any of those things, with trying to figure out how to approach, how to incorporate it, I have strategy power hours where we can knock around some ideas, talk about what approach you might need to take to your work, to your skill building, and your professional development, throughout the course of the year. Happy to, I'll drop that link so you can schedule and we can get on the calendar for that. Or if you need more time and you're like, no, you know what? I really, really need to work on this more because I need to be able to develop and to create content to deliver at workshops. I mean, that's something I started doing a lot of when I became a professional executive. I was getting asked to do presentations at conferences and all of that all the time. That is absolutely a part of professional life, wherever you are, whatever industry you are. If you're becoming an expert in whatever the topic is, or you're leading uh, a part of your organization, those invitations to speak at conferences are going to come. And or I always encourage people to seek them out. So that means you need to prepare what it is you would say and know how you present it, and then also practicing what you would say and how you would present it. All work, training, professional development work that I've done with clients over the years. So I haven't done it as much recently, but I still get some help, some requests for it, and would love to do it. It's one of my favorite things to do. All right. So there we are. Love that. I encourage you, ask you once again to like and subscribe because I don't remember if I did that for a second time. But also, I'm going to ask you to remember to celebrate you and all your goodness every day. And I look forward to talking with you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye.